Module 3 Level of Aspirations, prepared and presented by Mrs. M. Sharada, PhD Scholar, Part-Time, Department of Educational Psychology, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Karapakkam, Chennai 97. Guided by Dr. P. N. Lakshmi Shanmugam, Assistant Professor, Department of Educational Psychology, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Karapakkam, Chennai 97. Introduction. The level at which a person sets his or her significant goals, the level of performance to which he or she aspires. An individual's aspiration level has an important bearing on his or her personality and adjustment. It is a basic component of his or her self-image, the way he or she appears in his or her own eyes. Generally speaking, most normal individuals have been found to set their significant goals just a little higher than they are sure of attaining. This image shows the level of aspiration. In the words of Clifford, a motive is a particular internal factor or condition that tends to initiate and to sustain activity. This motivation includes all those internal conditions which begin an activity or sustain it. Motive is different from stimulus because it is there even before the stimulus. In the absence of internal motive, there cannot be any response, however intense the external stimulus may be. The word motive includes all the internal and external factors that initiate an activity. But in psychology, motive includes only those factors which control the activity of the living being. All the motivation begins from the stimulus. Stimulus is initiative for all the motivation. It does not include mechanical or reflex factors that initiate an activity. But in psychology, motive includes only those factors which control the activity of the living being. But in psychology, motive includes only those factors which control the activity of the living being. Psychology explains the real motives behind the behavior and experience of the individual living beings. It is the example for stimulation. All the stimulations begins from our brain. Learning objectives. After completing this module in Moodle platform, the student teachers are able to acquire the knowledge of aspiration, define the meaning of aspiration, describes the motivation, distinguish between success and failure, explain intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, list out the cautionary principles of punishment, identify the informative punishment, understand competition and cooperation, develop the aspiration level to motivate the students, collect the videos for level of aspiration. Level of aspiration. The term level of aspiration was first used by a German psychologist by name Hoppe. Every individual has goals and he or she aspires to achieve this goal. In this course of achieving this goal, he or she has some expectation. The standard he wants to achieve in any task is described by psychologists as his level of aspiration. It is closely related to his self-esteem. Aspiration is closely related to his self-esteem. This image shows the psychologist Hoppe. People tend to raise their goals after success and lower after failure. Individuals who set goals that are too high will inevitably fail. Individuals who set goals that are too low are robbed of a sense of achievement no matter what they do. The ideal situation is for a student to maintain a realistic level of aspiration. The ideal situation is for a student to maintain a realistic level of aspiration. The goal setting parallels what the high jumper does when he or she sets the bar between the posts. He sets it high enough that she might fail. This image shows the goal setting proponents. He or she would take no satisfaction in setting it so low that he or she could jump successfully every time. Success and failure experiences come in the intermediate range between the point at which success is highly probable but failure is possible and that at which failure is highly probable but success is possible. Failure and success are the two sides of a coin. If we met failure, we should aim for success. A task may be much too easy. Then the person experiences no sense of success even though he or she accomplishes the task, or a task may be much too difficult. Here, one has no sense of ego involvement as one is bound to fail. The intermediate range is realistic. Much too easy versus much too difficult. These are the examples for these lines. In an experiment by Gilgod, Sait and Margaret in 1940, college students worked together in small groups. The task was simple arithmetic problems, the score being the time required to complete a page. Public announcement of the finishing time was made so that each student knew what others were doing. Each student is recorded privately his or her level of aspiration. It was found that these private expectations were modified by the group performance. Those whose groups had scores above average tended to lower their estimates. Those with scores below average tended to expect to gain. In this image shows the attentive cooperation of small groups for their level of achievement to reach their goals. In another experiment with college students by Festinger in 1942, shifts in aspiration level were studied when all the student knew was his or her own previous scores when he or she was told that his score was above or below that one of the three reference groups, high school, college and graduate students. If the score was below that the low prestige group, high school students, the aspiration level decreased most. If it was above that of the high prestige group, graduate students, aspiration level increased most. If it was above that of the high prestige group, graduate students, aspiration level decreased most. In this example, it shows the low prestige group was high school students, prestige group was graduate students, and high prestige group was graduate students. If we want to reach our goal, we should encourage ourselves through level of aspirations. Realistic level of aspiration. Motivation and aspiration affect each other in their actual functioning. The young child has to be guided and helped in the process of setting up a level of aspiration appropriate for his or her. Setting up too high a goal beyond the potential abilities of an individual will have disturbing effects, providing a sense of frustration which may completely disorganize the energy system. Such experiences bring in negative reactions like feelings of inferiority or aggression. Level of aspiration should be high enough to be challenging, low enough to be attainable. Level of aspiration should be high enough to be challenging, low enough to be attainable. It reflects one's personality. Level of aspiration reflects one's personality. It is related to one's self-concept. Motivation includes success, effort, vision, inspiration, aspiration. It all depends upon our aim. Self-confident, secure children and those with the history of success set realistic goals. They take moderate risks. Those who overestimate their performance set up goals way beyond their past achievements. They feel inadequate, lack confidence in themselves and always aim higher than they can reach. In other words, they take extreme risks. One can find such persons in gambling houses, race course and stock market speculations. Usually, they end up losing what little they saved. Those who underestimate themselves play safe, set a goal that is not at all challenging. Self-conscious, self-protective, they remain in life. This example shows trust yourself. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Witness the concept of an eminent musician totally lost in his communion with a higher force to reach higher octaves with ease. Also witness the performing arts of a great dancer and his or her disciples recapturing the glory of the traditional Bharatanatyam. In both instances, we witness the total involvement and dedication of the artists for the sake of art and not for the rewards that accompany the performance. We do witness professional tennis players dividing their loyalty to the exhibition of their talents as well as huge prize amount tagged on to these tournaments. We have before us instances of intrinsic motivation as well as extrinsic motivation. In one area, the activity is in itself interesting and absorbing. In another, some external inducement is needed to arouse interest and enthusiasm. Needless to add that intrinsic motivation is long-lasting and really satisfying. Long-lasting and really satisfying. It is inherent in the activity itself. No special reward for good behavior or punishment for errors are needed to teach a boy to ride his or her new bicycle. The learning at the end result have an intrinsic relationship. The learning at the end result have an intrinsic relationship. However, during the primary stage of education, it becomes necessary to provide some incentives or rewards to children for completing a learning task. In the course of time, children should be able to develop a liking for the learning activity and the pursue in the absence of any incentive. This is termed functional autonomy by Alport. A student might be required to conduct practical experiments in chemistry laboratory. His or her work and record would be evaluated by his or her teacher. However, he or she might have developed a passion for research as a career even in the absence of any compulsion or reward. Much depends on the teacher who needs to become a role model. Teachers who are not jealous to develop in pupils the spirit of inquiry or scientific temper and who remain contented with where transmission of information for passing on examination cannot help students develop intrinsic motivation. This image shows the types of motivation. One is intrinsic motivation and then extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is unavoidable. We cannot dispense with extrinsic motivation. Children love to be rewarded for their effort. All the children love to be rewarded for their effort. A candy or a new toy or a pleasant outing to park or zoo might be promised to children to induce them to study. These incentives are only means to the ends, not ends in themselves. Rewards please the recipient and reinforce in the individual an urge to improve performance. It is positive and integrative. It would be material to start with but become symbolic later. Prizes, distinctions and decorations are some of the forms of rewards. Verbal praise also is rewarding. It helps in ego maximization. Generating a good deal of interest, rewards should be gradually withdrawn so that after serving their introductory roles, they lead pupils to independent learning and functional autonomy. This image shows the example for intrinsic rewards. A reward planned by an adult, parent or teacher and arbitrarily related to the activity is a kind of bribe. It leads to docility and deference to authority rather than to originality and self-initiated activity. It engenders in a child an attitude of what do I get out of this? Some of the problems of cheating in examinations arise when desire for the external rewards outweigh regard for the process by which the reward is achieved. Rewards depends upon their works. Techniques of motivation. Reward and punishment. Student endeavors to do the best in order to get rewarded. He or she becomes pleased when he or she is given reward and greater enthusiasm on the part of the student is shown. Following things must be kept in mind while giving rewards to an individual. The nature of amount of reward should be according to the level of performance. Additional reward is always fatal for the future progress of an individual. An individual must know the importance of reward. An individual must know the importance of reward. If reward is given to so many individuals at a time, it loses its validity. If reward is given to so many individuals at a time, it loses its validity. This is the example for rewards. Reward should be traditional or a routine activity. Different types of reward should be given at different occasions. Reward should not be traditional or routine activity. Different types of reward should be given at different occasions. Reward should have some monetary or social value. Rewards should have some monetary or social value. As far as punishment is concerned, its fear leads an individual not to do unwanted jobs. The child comes to the class with a full preparation in order to avoid punishment. Following these must be kept in mind before assigning in any punishment. Punishment should not be regular. Punishment should not be regular. Such punishment can make the children habitual to it. Punishment should not be very severe. They can create hatred in minds of children towards the whole system. Punishment should not be very severe. Punishment should be given keeping in view the mental and physical resistance of children. Punishment should be given keeping in view the mental and physical resistance of children. Punishment should be judiciously distributed to all the guilty persons. Punishment should be judiciously distributed to all guilty persons. Researchers have made it clear that reward is a better technique of motivation than punishment. Researchers have made it clear that reward is a better technique of motivation than punishment. Punishment is fatal to the psychological development of the individual also. Punishment is fatal to the psychological development of the individual also. So, it should be avoided as much as possible. Praise and blame. Praise and blame. When a child is praised at his or her success, he or she is overjoyed. He or she is overjoyed. As a result, he works better than before. Following points must be kept in view while using a praise as a technique of motivation. If an individual is praised at every big or small success randomly, he or she will be addicted in listening to the words of praise. He or she will be addicted in listening to the words of praise. As a result, no new behavior is created due to praise. Weaker children should be praised even at their small bits of success, while talented children should be praised only when they have done something very unique. Praise technique should be applied according to changing ratio schedule, that is, sometimes it should be used and sometimes it should not be used, and the subject must be know what time this is to be given. This is the example in my image for praise. As far as blame is concerned, students are directly blamed for their failures and they are made ashamed. However, excessive use of blame as a technique of motivation may frustrate the child. Following points must be kept in mind before blaming the students on their failures. Positive efforts of a child must be praised first before blaming him or her on his or her failure. Students should not be solely made responsible for their failure. Other related factors and conditions must also be included in the list of factors causing failures in life. The language of the blame should not be insulting for students. The language of the blame should not be insulting for students. The self-respect of every individual must be recognized. Blaming is one another is not a good thing. Success and failure. Success and failure. Success creates self-confidence among individuals and possibility of more successes increases. Teacher creates an environment in the class in which all the barriers in the way of success are removed. Success creates self-confidence. Failure can also work as a source of motivation. Failure can also work as a source of motivation. Especially the talented students accept the failure as a challenge for them. In order to use this technique in the classroom situation, the teacher presents such problems in the class which students are unable to solve. The bright students accept this challenge for future and thus they are motivated to work. In this image shows the learning, training, instruction, practice. It goes to the success. Competition and cooperation. Competition and cooperation. The feeling of competition is universal in humans. In the classroom situations, weak students compare themselves with their own group and bright students compare their achievements with that of bright group of students. In this way, the whole class is motivated in games and sports to Competitions works as the best motivator. Every sports person does harder and harder efforts to rise his or her performance level. Such type of competition is called individual competition. Team competition also works as a good motivating force. These two types of competitive feelings are aroused by the teacher in the class in order to motivate the pupils. The utility of cooperation as a technique of motivation is very limited. Here, students are asked to work with a mutual cooperation so that everyone in the group may get an opportunity to develop. Project method of teaching is a good example of this technique. This image shows the cooperation. Knowledge of progress. It is the traditional method of motivating the students. They are regularly told about their progress on the basis of formative evaluations. When they come to know about their achievements, they work harder to raise this level due to the feedback obtained from the knowledge of their progress. Teacher and sports teacher should regularly evaluate the achievement of the students, and this should be informed immediately to them. If any delay is made in the evaluation or its reporting, the teacher will not be able to give any feedback to their students, and the students forget their mistakes or actual activities. For this purpose, regular tests should be conducted in the class and they should be evaluated with no delay. Novelty. Researchers have proved that monotony makes a man bored. In order to motivate such persons in their task, novelty and change in the approach is essential. In the classroom situation, a teacher brings about novelty in his or her method of teaching at regular intervals. This makes the students come across to new experiences at every moment. Level of students must be kept in view while introducing novelty in the situation so that this novelty may work as bouncer. Aspiration level. Level of aspiration has a direct relationship with the objectives of life, and individuals can achieve the objectives of his or her life when his or her aspiration level is high. A teacher tries to raise this level as much high as possible, but it is always matched with the mental or physical potentialities of the pupils. If this level of aspiration is higher than the physical or mental level, student will get frustrated at their successive failures. Contrary to this, if this level is lower than the physical or mental level, it will reduce the activities of students and they will develop the inferiority complex. This example shows the level of aspiration. Functions of classroom motivation. It organizes the behavior of the students. It initiates and sustains the activities behavior of the learning. It regulates and controls the students' behavior. It accelerates the rate of activity and behavior of students. These functions of motivation serve the following purpose of education. Describe change in pupils' behavior. Character building of the students. Active and attentive responses of the learner. Mental development. It organizes the behavior of the students. It initiates and sustains the activities and behavior of the learning. It regulates and controls the students' behavior. It accelerates the rate of activity and behavior of students. These functions of motivation serve the following purpose of education. Describe change in pupils' behavior, character building of the students, active and attentive responses of the learners, mental development. Development of interest, development of social efficiency and traits, raising the level of attainment, development of feeling and attitude, facilitate and individual variation in learning situation. Development of interest, development of social efficiency and traits, raising the level of attainment, development of feeling and attitude, facilitate and individual variation in learning situation. The appropriate techniques of motivation can be selected on the basis of the following criteria. Level of maturation of the students. Level of maturation of the students, teaching and learning objectives, the goal of the student, need of the learner and learning conditions and structures. These criteria are very helpful for realizing the learning objectives by leading teaching effectively. Educational implications. Motivation has its intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic means operating from inside. If ego is not curtailed, the individual ability will be challenged. Hence, the teacher should advise properly to keep ego under control. Praise and blame are intrinsic. Intrinsic means operating from outside. It will act on the students for better learning. If it is used in a proper manner, experiments reveal that it stimulates the average and inferior children, but it has lesser effect on superior children. Blame has its positive effects on superior children. Girls are much fond of praise than boys. In general, praise has better effect than blame, irrespective of sex, age and ability. Self-assessment. The term level of aspiration was first used by German psychologist by name. Level of aspiration is closely related to das esteem. Success and failures are the two sides of motivation. True or false? Success and failures are the two sides of motivation. True or false? What is meant by intrinsic motivation? Byproduct punishment means option A, fortunate, option B, unfortunate, option C, never, option D, always. Option A, fortunate, option B, unfortunate, option C, never, option D, always. Differentiate competition and cooperation.
Motivation is the experience of wanting something or wanting to avoid it. When we study how we get motivated to learn, develop, and succeed, we can identify two contrary forces, extrinsic and intrinsic ones. On the one hand, we want to belong, desire to be loved, and seek to get the attention we think we deserve. We are motivated extrinsically by rewards in order to progress socially. On the other hand, we strive to explore things that are satisfying in themselves, disregarding rewards. We are motivated intrinsically by a natural curiosity which we follow because it feels right. The opinions of others don't matter. To understand why we probably need a good mix of both, let's imagine two 4-year-old children. Both grow up in families that want only the best for their kids, but have completely opposing views on how to motivate them to succeed. Tom's parents believe that all their boy needs is love. To not undermine his intrinsic interests, they never praise him or use rewards. Eventually, they decide not to give him any feedback at all, fearing it could corrupt his free mind. Over the years, Tom develops an immense capacity to imagine, spending most of his time playing by himself. By being allowed to follow his passions, he learns what he likes and what he doesn't. But Tom doesn't learn what others expect and gets easily irritated when asked to do something in a particular way. Mira's parents believe that their precious little girl needs clear rules about what's good and what's not. they see it as their duty to help Mira learn by providing precise and actionable feedback on all aspects of her young life. Mira spends her days in preschool, music, and ballet lessons. Over the years, she gets exceptionally good at the things that please the adults around her. However, since there is neither time to play nor to relax, she doesn't discover her own interests. Being alone bores her. At 14, Tom is independent and begins writing science fiction. He realizes that he isn't quite like his friends and spends most of his time at the library. When he shares his writing, others can't quite relate. At the same age, Mira is at the top of her class and has plenty of friends and admirers. She knows what is expected of her and makes sure to meet those expectations. Sometimes the pressure becomes unbearable, although that's her secret. By the day he turns 21, Tom has a unique perspective of the world. He is intelligent, but doesn't like to work for money and hence is always broke. He hates the idea of conforming to conventional norms and is annoyed if someone interferes with his creative expression. At this point, Tom knows a lot about himself, but doesn't connect well with others. To him, people seem to follow rules without questioning them, just like sheep. Integrating into the society is difficult at this point, and he begins to search for utopia. Mira makes it into a top medical school where she realizes she'll never be top of the class again. Once that place seems out of reach, her motivation drops and she wonders if medicine actually interests her. Since quitting is no option, she takes up a second major and runs for student council president. Soon, Mira will know everything about what others expect, but nothing about what she likes for herself. All her life, she has just listened, driven by external feedback loops. At this point, she's almost lost the ability to question the norms of the society she grew up in. Listening to our heart can tell us who we are, but not how to be happy among others. Listening to others can motivate us to be a part of their world, but doesn't teach us if that world is ours. This is why it's probably good for the two to go together. Then we can learn what we want and get the feedback we need in order to stay motivated to explore new roads into a better society. A large body of research shows that balancing the two forces is not straightforward. One meta-analysis of 128 studies examined the effects of extrinsic rewards on intrinsic motivation. While most rewards significantly undermined our intrinsic interest, positive feedback, which is an extrinsic motivator, inspires us to keep going. Put simply, honest words of encouragement get us going, while money or gifts undermine our inner drive. What about you? Do you listen to your heart or to the voices of society? And from your personal experience, which of the two eventually takes your decision? Share your thoughts and check the description to dive deeper into the topic. Sprouts videos are published under the Creative Commons license. That means our videos are free and anyone can download, edit, and play them for personal use. And public schools, governments, and nonprofit organizations can also use them for training, online courses, or designing new curriculums. To help us stay independent and support our work, you can join our patrons and contribute. Just visit patreon.com/sprouts. Even $1 can make a difference.